Hey everyone, this is Buu, Community Evangelist with the DevCentral team, and I'm joined by Nick today. Nick is from our Distributed Cloud Technical Marketing team, and we're going to go over a new demo that they just released. Nick, what are we going to look at today?
All right, so first of all, it's a GitHub guide, and this is the guide that we had built because we do a lot of demos in our team. So for a demo, we typically need a sample application and then some guide as to how to set it up, how to get it running. And in this case, we really focused on the web API and app protection, which is WAAP. So XC WAAP is a scenario that you can run through with this demo guide, and it provides you with everything that you need to get started. So it's the simplest, fastest path to get going with a demo on XC.
Oh, that's awesome. Nick's actually been with me before on a recording a few months back now, and we got a lot of good positive results from that. Just people being able to spin up demos really quickly so that you can kind of get stuff in your hands, right? Like,
yeah, one of the big problems is that you sometimes get a new account, right, on any platform. You log in and then you're like, okay, well, I need to follow something, some kind of a guide to get started. Yeah. This is just the easiest on-ramp to get going very quickly. You get a sample application. You get a guide as to how to deploy it. It has essentially you spin up an app in distributed cloud virtual Kubernetes. So it's a Kubernetes app. Nice. And it's a little app. It has a little bit of an API and a little bit of front end that does star ratings. So think about your e-commerce scenario when people do comments and do ratings. And the reason why we picked that is because a lot of times you have automation like bots doing ratings for you and spamming comments, and sometimes people try to attack the system with different scripts. Yeah. And this is a really good scenario just to get going very quickly.
Yeah, cool. All right, let's see what we got.
All right, so first of all, I'm going to show the GitHub repository, and as you can see, it has a table of contents within which we understand what is the objective, what's the scenario. And as I said, we just run through several use cases. The first one is setting up the web application firewall for this app, which we test. So you definitely want to be able to very quickly stand up a protection for your app, but apps typically have APIs these days. So we also have API protection as another use case. Then to configure granular options for your policies, we have a service policy mechanism that we showcase through load balancer configuration in this case. And finally, we're showcasing bot mitigation, which, as I mentioned, is one of the use cases, and also DDoS protection. And in fact, it's very easy to kind of sometimes get confused by the various different options within any platform, but in this case, we're laying out these two very straightforward paths. One is manually go through a configuration step by step using the distributed cloud console. And the other path is an interesting one because for those that are doing a lot of demos like ourselves, we sometimes just want to run a script. So we actually include an Ansible script with some modules that we built in order to automate both the deployment of the infrastructure and the app, as well as the use cases that we use to run through in this scenario.
Yeah, so potentially someone could take the Ansible scripts, at least for the running the use cases, and they could do some modifications to actually run them in production?
That's right. Well, in theory, we're saying that this is what we're doing right now as an incubation of Ansible modules. Folks can absolutely get in and take the modules that we've created and leverage the modules, because essentially they're making API calls to the distributed cloud platform and modify some of the scripts for their own needs. But in this case, we deploy the application using Ansible, the manifest that specifies the playbook for what needs to be done. And this manifest has several sections. So the first section is installing the infrastructure, and then subsequent sections could be commented out. If you just want to run and deploy something, you can then just see what you've done and then uncomment certain things and rerun to go through the different use cases, including things like sending attacks or configuring different protection.
Cool, awesome.
So as you can see further down, we talk about this architecture scenario, which is the app itself, as I described. We have also included with this a couple different tools. But one is probably a very useful little utility, which is a tool that is a web-based tool that sends attacks to just your application. So don't try to send attacks at a different website. It should not work. It only works with the star rating application running within XC environment. And yeah, the reason I'm saying is that some people have tried and they're like, well, no, we're not going to be releasing a tool out there that sends attacks through any website. So it has to be the CNAME that you would copy or something that is related to the star rating application. And as you can see, through the different paths here, first of all, we're setting up the virtual Kubernetes cluster, which is the first step in deploying an application on distributed cloud. Probably the easiest and fastest way to do it. Takes a minute or so. Once the virtual Kubernetes is deployed, you can start pushing out a application. In this case, we provide the application as part of the manifest, the virtual Kubernetes manifest file. So within this format, as you can see, it's all you need is the kubectl or kubectl tool, which is a standard. You can also see there's a link here to the tool itself. You will need that to run and apply the manifest to the credentials that you download from the virtual Kubernetes. As you can see, the screenshots for all of that. Once you have applied the manifest, that would go out and grab the Docker container for the application. For the services need to be deployed, we'll deploy it in your Kubernetes for you, and then you'll have a routing app, but still you need to route traffic to it. So the next step is setting up the HTTP load balancer, which is a very quick process of configuring essentially the policies, the origin pools, couple clicks, and you should be able to now have a fully functional application running within virtual Kubernetes. And like I said, this is the first step to get the environment set up, and at the end you should have a running app, as you can see here, with the CNAME that you copied earlier. And this is just to get started. Now you have this environment, and as I said, you can rerun the configuration with Ansible, for example, so that anytime you make a change, just rerun the Ansible script, and then we'll reset the environment. So the first part is done, right? So you now have your application. The second part is just to go through and start using the different tools to send attacks. You can use your own, or you can use the tool that we provided. And within each use case, like for example, for the app protection, we go through the steps on what you need to do to protect your application. So there are, like I said, several use cases, and we run the tool. We see that the application is vulnerable because we've built some vulnerabilities into it. And then we go through and set up the protection. So in this case, creating a web application firewall, and then attaching that web application firewall to the load balancer, setting a couple configuration. And I ran through this several times, and I'm getting better at it every single time, obviously. But using the guide, just want to make sure everything was working correctly. It just takes a couple of minutes, right? A couple of minutes to set up the web application firewall and the protection, and then you can send the attacks, and then you can see that attacks are being caught. And of course, the rich telemetry that you get from distributed cloud, the dashboards, you can see which signatures were triggered, the different policy events. So in essence, this is just a very quick way to get started, create the application, and then start sending these type of attacks.
That's very fast. Like even just scrolling through this, like I see all the steps. Not a huge amount of clicks in order to do this, to have this up and running. Of course, somebody would probably take their time maybe to kind of, check out what they're doing on there to understand it a little bit more. But if you wanted to just fly through it, you could probably do it in just a few minutes.
Yeah, and the other thing is just getting familiar with the terminology and the different ways to describe something. That obviously, if you're coming from a different set of environments, you may refer to applications as different things. What's a load balancer? What are the endpoints, etc. So in our taxonomy, this is also a good way to just get started with what are the different things that get affected by configuration? And this is a useful guide because it has screenshots built in, as you can see. And once we get through it, it's quite easy to see how this is applicable to your own configuration. So for example, we're looking at the API protection here, and most of the API first type of scenarios, when you build an app, you may be using Swagger to configure your API routes and understand how the application communicates with its services. In this case, we're showing API protection where you can add a Swagger file, configure a couple parameters, configure the service policy. And then that would then help you protect your application with very, very granular control over which API calls are legitimate and which API calls are not. So if somebody's trying to attack your application and specifically attack the APIs, they won't be able to. So we are providing that as a reference within our small little application, and we provide Swagger file as well, so you can see what it is. But it's really easy to extrapolate by saying, oh, my app uses this Swagger file, and my app is running differently, or my sample app maybe has a different configuration. Still can use the same guide, just swap the apps, swap the Swagger files, you get the same result.
Now, the testing for the attacks, you said, is meant to go towards the CNAMEs that are provided here. So if somebody else were to try to do this, they loaded their own Swagger file, they pointed at their own origin pool, they just have to come up with another tool in order to test the
They'll need to run the test themselves, because the testing tool here is just limited to this guide and this app. But it's not that difficult to go out and find some information as far as what attacks to run. You can even manually do that. So there's many types of attacks with WAAP, cross-site scripting and SQL injection. There are many different ways to trigger a response, and also to see if the response isn't triggered, just to make sure your configuration is correct. But to answer your question, we just made this so that it's an easy thing to work with an app that we can control, rather than somebody taking this tool and starting to do things they shouldn't.
Yeah, cool.
And finally, we talk about bot protection, and that's a interesting scenario because we also are sending some attacks that are, as you can see, generating some bot traffic. And this is to simulate somebody that's trying to spam ratings. So when we have an indication, you see somebody's now sending the spam ratings, and the first time around, bots are able to do it. So how do you protect that? Is again through a load balancer configuration. You've noticed the pattern here. Configure the load balancer properties, again, add protection. Couple different parameters, very easy. And in order for us to be able to track this to the security tool, we are changing the response to 403 so that it errors out on the response page. And again, sending the same attack, you're getting the status blocked. So again, the rich telemetry you can see here under the security dashboard allows you to analyze the requests, see legitimate traffic versus bot traffic, see and control granularly how you would like your environment to behave. And this gives the network operators and security operations all the power at their fingertips, just for all of these parameters, including DDoS, as the very last section indicates. We did not include a DDoS attack in this case, because obviously that would require standing up many different resources to send attacks. Maybe in the next version if we get a lot of requests, but for now we're just limiting just to showing how to configure DDoS in case somebody wanted to.
You'll get the idea of what's going to happen.
That's right. But again, this is just one guide to very quickly go through. And again, takes maybe 30 minutes, 40 minutes if you've never done the platform, once you have an account, to go through the guide from the very beginning to configuring the app to sending the attacks. And if it's Ansible, it's much faster.
That's awesome. You know what I like about this too? You've got a way to show off the WAAP services here, but it also uses the virtual Kubernetes service in behind the scenes too. So you're actually getting a 2-for-1 here.
Right.
Well, 5 for 1 to be able to play with virtual Kubernetes. You get the kubectl installed on there and shown how to at least set up a manifest. So you could actually use it to do more stuff with it, right?
Yeah, and this is a use case for application delivery, right? So F5 Distributed Cloud provides a network of locations across the world to deliver applications to. So this virtual Kubernetes is a really cool concept. When we first started to work with the platform, we were like, wow, this is so easy. So you have these locations all over the world that are all part of this distributed Kubernetes, and you can say, I would like a slice of that Kubernetes in these locations, or maybe all of these locations, and then I want this app service to be deployed in all of them. Go ahead and do it for me. Now, what I just described could be like, days and days of somebody's work typically, but within distributed cloud, you just say, here's the manifest, go ahead and deploy, boom, it's done, right?
Yeah,
And so,
that's awesome.
and if you're using Ansible, you look at the playbook, you tweak some settings, and now you don't just have one application, you can have a whole topology of different apps and different configurations, again, automated, and XC, Distributed Cloud WAAP, does it very quickly.
Super cool. Yeah, this is awesome. So where do we send people to after checking this out?
This is on DevCentral GitHub repository, XC WAAP demo guide. Very easy to get started. If there's questions, if somebody wants to provide any kind of input, obviously this is meant to be as a living thing. So open an issue within GitHub using standard process. We'll take a look. We'd be happy to address any questions.
Yeah, that's awesome. So there you go. Get started really quick with Distributed Cloud WAAP services and check this out. Thanks a lot, Nick.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.